My sister filed a lawsuit claiming I stole our parents' silverware after they passed. In court, she sobbed, it was supposed to be mine. I quietly presented the will, clearly stating the silverware was left to me. Her lawyer had nothing to say as the judge ruled in my favor. Some families come together when their parents pass. Mine fell apart. When our parents died, my older sister, let's call her Brenda, showed her true colors. She had always been self-centered, always needed to have the best of everything, always took more than her share. Our parents saw it, but they let it slide to avoid fights. I was used to her nonsense. But what she did after our parents passed, I never could have imagined. The funeral wasn't even over yet. Our parents died within a year of each other. Dad went first, heart attack, completely unexpected. Mom was never the same afterward. She held on for a while but passed away less than a year later. It was hard. They weren't rich, but they left us a fully paid-off house, some savings, and a lifetime of memories. Brenda made a huge show of her grief at the funeral. Wailing, throwing herself over the casket, whispering to people about how she had taken care of Mom the most. That was a lie. I lived in the same city as our parents and visited them every week. Brenda lived 2 hours away and barely called. But she made sure everyone at the funeral saw her pain. And then, before the funeral was even over, she pulled me aside. So, she sniffled, eyes still wet from her performance, when do we go through their things? I just stared at her. Brenda, can we just take some time? She gave me a tight smile. I just want to make sure nothing gets lost. She took everything she could. 3 days later, I got a text from her, hey, just a heads up, I went ahead and cleared out Mom and Dad's house. Don't worry, I kept the valuables safe. I drove over there so fast I barely remember parking. I walked into a nearly empty house. The big things, furniture, dishes, books, were still there. But anything small and valuable? Gone. Mom's jewelry. Dad's coin collection. The family photo albums. The antique clock from the mantel. Even their wedding rings. And there she was, standing in the living room, smiling like she had done me a favor. Hey, she said, all cheerful, as if she hadn't just raided our parents' house like a thief. I took a deep breath. Where is everything? She waved a hand. I have it all at my place. Just keeping it safe. You know, in case people start coming around, looking to take things. I stared at her. Who would do that? She shrugged. You never know. I clenched my jaw. Brenda, we were supposed to go through everything together. With the will. She rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. You know Mom and Dad would have wanted me to handle this. I was the oldest. That was her logic? That she was owed everything because she was older? I should have fought her on it right then and there, but I was too stunned. Too exhausted. So I left. And I called our parents' lawyer. Then she realized she forgot something. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Brenda was suing me. Apparently, she had gone through the stuff she stole and realized she forgot the real prize, the silverware. Mom's silverware set was famous in our family. It had belonged to our grandmother and had been passed down. It wasn't just some ordinary set. It was real sterling silver, old, and valuable. And our mother had left it to me in the will. Brenda, of course, didn't care about that. She claimed I had stolen the silverware while she was grieving. She said it was understood that it would go to her. She hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit demanding that I return the silverware immediately. I couldn't believe it. She had already taken everything else. But that wasn't enough for her. She wanted everything. The courtroom show. Brenda showed up to court in tears. She sniffled. She dabbed her eyes. She wore all black, like she was still deep in mourning, despite the fact that she had been posting vacation photos on Facebook just a week earlier. Her lawyer, a greasy-looking guy who screamed, overpriced but incompetent, spoke first. Your Honor, my client has been devastated by the loss of her parents. During this time of grief, her only sibling, her own flesh and blood, betrayed her by taking a priceless family heirloom that was meant to stay in her possession. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I waited. Brenda took the stand. She let out a shaky breath. She sniffled, voice breaking, I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought we were going to go through their things together. She wiped a fake tear. And then one day, the silverware was gone. Her voice trembled. It was supposed to be mine. My mother told me it was mine. She always said it would go to me. It's all I have left of them. She started sobbing. Loudly. Dramatically. The judge let her cry for a moment, then turned to me. Do you have a response? I didn't say anything. I just pulled out the will. I walked up, handed it to the judge, and pointed to the exact section that read, "The silverware set, passed down from my mother, shall be given to my child, my name." The courtroom was silent. The judge flipped through the pages. Then he looked at Brenda's lawyer. Do you have any response? Her lawyer fumbled with his papers. Stammered. Your Honor, my client, was under the impression that. The judge cut him off. This case is dismissed. Brenda's head snapped up. The judge continued, the will is clear. The silverware belongs to the defendant. Court is adjourned. Brenda looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed. She turned bright red. As the judge left, she lost it. Wait, but, no. That's not fair, she shrieked. People were staring. She turned on me. How could you do this to me? I just stared at her. Brenda, you did this to yourself. Her face twisted in rage. I hope you rot. And she stormed out. But she wasn't done yet. A week later, another letter showed up. Brenda was suing me again. This time, for emotional distress. She wasn't done yet. A week after I thought it was over, I got another letter from her lawyer. Brenda was suing me again. This time, she claimed emotional distress. Her argument? That I had humiliated her in court. That I had robbed her of her inheritance. That she had been so traumatized by losing the silverware that it caused her severe emotional suffering. She even attached a doctor's note claiming she had been experiencing extreme stress and anxiety since the trial. I nearly laughed when I read it. Brenda? Stressed? The same woman who, just 3 days after the first court case, had posted a beach photo on Facebook with a caption that said, "Living my best life." #blessed, she wasn't suffering. She was just angry she lost. But fine. If she wanted to go another round, so be it. The fake breakdown. The second courtroom showdown was somehow even more dramatic than the first. Brenda sat at the plaintiff's table, looking frail. She had lost weight, whether from stress or a new diet, I didn't know. But she made sure to look pitiful. Her lawyer, clearly embarrassed to be back in court for this nonsense, stood up and began his speech. Your Honor, my client has suffered immense psychological damage due to the actions of the defendant. He gestured toward me like I was some kind of criminal mastermind. She has been unable to sleep. She has been unable to eat. She has been consumed by the agony of being betrayed by her own sibling. Brenda let out a shaky breath and dabbed at her dry eyes. I just. She whimpered, I don't understand why my sister hates me so much. I've lost everything, and she keeps attacking me. She actually started shaking. The performance was impressive. If I hadn't known her my whole life, I might have believed her. The judge turned to me. Do you have a response? I stood up. Your Honor, my sister posted multiple vacation photos just days after the last trial, all with captions about how happy she was. I held up printed screenshots. The judge took them. He frowned as he flipped through photo after photo of Brenda smiling on a beach, drinking a cocktail, laughing with friends. Her lawyer's face went pale. I turned to Brenda. Are you saying you were suffering from severe distress when you posted these? Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The judge sighed. Miss, Brenda's last name, do you have anything to say? She burst into tears. Not real ones. Just the loud, ugly crying that happens when she knows she's cornered. This is so unfair, she shrieked. She's stalking me. How did she even get those photos? I raised an eyebrow. They were public on Facebook. The judge rubbed his temples. He looked exhausted. This case is dismissed. Again. Brenda screamed. The meltdown. After court, Brenda chased me into the parking lot. You think you're so smart, don't you? She hissed. Brenda, go home. She stepped closer. You don't get to win. You don't get to walk away with everything while I get nothing. I crossed my arms. You stole from our parents' house. You sued me twice. How am I the problem here? Her face twisted with rage. Mom and Dad loved me more. They wanted me to have everything. You just weaseled your way into their good graces at the last second. I froze. What are you talking about? She let out a bitter laugh. Oh, don't act like you don't know, she sneered. Mom was going to change the will. She told me she was leaving me the silverware. Everything. But you were always the little favorite. Always sucking up to them. You got in her head, didn't you? I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just about money or silverware. She actually, truly believed that our parents were supposed to leave her everything. Brenda, I said slowly, Mom and Dad loved us both. But they also knew you were selfish. That's why they made things clear in the will. Her eyes flashed. She took a deep breath, and suddenly, she smiled. Too sweet. Too calm. All right, she said. You win. I didn't like how she said it. It sounded wrong. And I should have known, Brenda wasn't done. The burglary 2 weeks later, I woke up to a call from my neighbor. Hey, she said. I saw a car outside your house late last night. Someone was messing around near your door. My stomach turned. I rushed downstairs. The front door was unlocked. I checked the silverware cabinet. The lock was broken. And the silverware? Gone. The silverware was gone. My hands shook as I stared at the empty cabinet. I knew. I knew it was Brenda. But knowing and proving are two different things. I checked the rest of my house. Nothing else was missing. No sign of forced entry, except for the lock on the silverware cabinet. She hadn't taken anything else. Not my laptop. Not my TV. Not even the small stash of cash I kept in a drawer. Just the silverware. I called the police. The police were less than helpful. A cop showed up about an hour later. Older guy, looked like he was 2 months from retirement. He took one look at the broken cabinet and sighed like this was the most boring case in the world. Any idea who might have done this? I clenched my jaw. I have a pretty strong suspicion. He raised an eyebrow. Anyone with access to your house? I hesitated. Brenda did have a spare key. But I had changed the locks after the last lawsuit. So how did she get in? The cop sighed again. Look, without video footage or an eyewitness, there's not much we can do. You might want to check if the silverware shows up at a pawn shop. I stared at him. That's it? He shrugged. Sorry, ma'am. If you find any proof, let us know. And just like that, he left. I was livid. Brenda had broken into my home and stolen from me. And she was about to get away with it. I needed proof. I thought about what the cop said. Pawn shops. Brenda was broke. She had spent years living beyond her means. Fancy vacations, designer bags, expensive dinners, all on credit. She had probably already tried to sell the silverware. I started making calls. Philadelphia has a lot of pawn shops. Most of them don't care where their stuff comes from, as long as they get a cut. But after about a dozen calls, I finally got something. The guy on the phone hesitated when I asked about antique silverware. Yeah, someone did bring in a set like that yesterday. You looking to buy? I gripped my phone. Actually, I think it was stolen from me. Silence. Then, he sighed. Look, lady. If you're serious, you gotta come down here with proof. I can't just take your word for it. I was already grabbing my coat. Brenda was sloppy. I drove straight to the pawn shop. The guy behind the counter looked exactly how I expected. Balding, bad attitude, chewing gum like he hated his life. You got proof? He asked. I pulled out the will. I showed him a photo of the silverware. His expression changed. Shit. I leaned in. She already sold it, didn't she? He shifted uncomfortably. Not yet. She wanted to, but, well, we held it. Figured it was real silver, wanted to check the value first. My heart jumped. So you still have it? He nodded. I almost collapsed with relief. Then, the best part. She left her name on the slip, he muttered. Didn't even try to use a fake one. I grinned. Brenda wasn't just greedy. She was stupid. The trap. I called the police again. This time, they cared. Turns out, trying to sell stolen goods with your real name is a crime. The cops set up a sting. They had the pawn shop call Brenda, telling her the silverware was appraised and they were ready to buy. She fell for it. Hook. Line. Sinker. Brenda walked right into it. I wasn't there when she arrived. But the pawn shop owner later told me she was all smiles when she walked in. She was about to get paid. Then the cop stepped out. Her face dropped. She tried to run. Didn't make it 2 steps before they grabbed her. They arrested her on the spot. She called me from jail. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. You did this to me, she snarled. You think you won? You think this is over? Watch your back, you stupid. I deleted it before she finished. This was far from over. Brenda was in jail, but it wasn't over yet. Brenda had been caught red-handed. She stole from me. She tried to sell the silverware. She got arrested. I should have felt relief. But I didn't. Because I knew Brenda. She wasn't the type to give up. And I was right. The bailout. 3 days later, I got a text from my cousin, Mark. Your sister is out. Her friend posted bail. She's pissed. I wasn't surprised. Brenda had always been good at manipulating people. She must have convinced one of her friends that she was the victim. And if she was out, that meant she had one goal left. The final confrontation. I knew she'd show up eventually. And she did. It was late. I was locking up for the night when I heard banging on my front door. Not knocking. Banging. I looked through the peephole. Brenda. Her hair was a mess. Her face was red. And even through the door, I could hear her breathing heavily. I knew she wasn't going to leave. So I opened the door. And that's when she lunged at me. The explosion. She shoved me hard, forcing me back a step. You ruined my life, she screamed. I pushed her back. Brenda, get out of my house. She was shaking. Livid, her eyes darted around like she was looking for something to grab, something to throw. You called the cops on me, she spat. You humiliated me. In court. In front of everyone. You stole from me. I shot back. You broke into my house. What did you think was going to happen? I was supposed to have it, she shrieked. I was supposed to have everything. And just like that, she snapped. The truth comes out. She started sobbing. Ugly, heaving, body-racking sobs. But this time? They were real. I did everything right, she choked out. I was supposed to be the one Mom and Dad loved the most. I was the oldest. They were supposed to take care of me. I just stared at her. This wasn't just about silverware. She had spent her whole life believing she was the favorite. That she was entitled to everything. That our parents owed her. And when the will proved her wrong, she couldn't handle it. She had built her entire life around a lie. And now, she had nothing. The aftermath. She slid to the floor, crying. For the first time in years, I felt sorry for her. But not sorry enough to forgive her. You need help, Brenda, I said softly. Real help. She didn't answer. Just kept crying. And I knew, right then, that our relationship was over. The final goodbye. Brenda ended up taking a plea deal. She got probation, community service, and a record. She stopped speaking to me. Stopped speaking to anyone in the family. She moved out of state a few months later. No warning. No goodbye. And honestly, I was relieved. I won. I kept the silverware. I kept my dignity. And most of all, I kept my peace. But part of me still wonders. Was there ever a version of our lives where Brenda wasn't like this? Maybe. But that's not the life we got. And I've finally made peace with that.